When people think about Canberra, think of Parliament House, Flower Yard, Questacon, and of course the infamous Summernats. But Canberra has a dark history, one that started innocently from a building material known as Mr. Fluffy asbestos. In the 1960s and 70s, as Canberra was turning into a thriving urban centre, its residents unknowingly welcomed into their homes a hazardous substance that would cast a long and sinister shadow over their lives. So, what is Mr. Fluffy? Well, it's a term given to snowy-looking insulation that was made from raw asbestos fibres and pumped into roofing spaces of Canberra homes. It was marketed as the perfect insulating material and considered fire-resistant, effective and affordable. I am currently in the quiet suburb of O'Connor, where 15 homes were built using loose-fill asbestos. In fact, on this very street, one of the last Mr. Fluffy boxes was sold in 2017 for over $1 million. In O'Connor, 3 of the top 5 sales during this time were Mr. Fluffy blocks situated on Hammond, Hovia and Hardman Street. When asbestos fibres are inhaled or ingested, it can lead to serious health problems. In the case of Mr. Fluffy insulation, the primary danger lay in the fact that the asbestos fibres used in these homes were not securely bound. Over time, these fibres became airborne and posed as a severe risk to anyone living in Mr. Fluffy homes. Those that were exposed to these asbestos fibres developed serious health issues such as lung cancer, asbestosis, and mesothelioma. As the health risks became more widely understood, the Australian government and various state governments took measures to regulate and control the use of asbestos-containing materials. Mr. Fluffy insulation in Canberra was discontinued in the late 1970s. Unfortunately, by then, many people had unknowingly been living in these contaminated houses for years and exposed to these poisonous fibres. The use of asbestos was eventually banned in new construction materials in Australia in the late 1980s and completely banned in all forms in 2003. The ACT government released a full list of asbestos-contaminated homes in Canberra. More than 1,000 homes were affected. It is believed that up to 30,000 people are affected by asbestos-related illnesses because they may have owned or rented one of these houses. An ANU Mr. Fluffy health study covering the period from November 83 to December 2013 found that approximately 17,000 people had lived in a Mr. Fluffy house in Canberra. Out of this group study, a total of 285 current and former residents of the ACT were diagnosed with mesothelioma. This is most probably due to the direct exposure to loose-fill asbestos. Other key findings indicate there was no cases of mesothelioma in women who lived in these Mr. Fluffy houses, and also prostate cancer rates were high in men who lived in these Mr. Fluffy homes. So, who created Mr. Fluffy, you may ask? Well, the company was founded by a man named Dirk Jansen, who launched asbestos fluff that he marketed to home and business owners. Dirk was a plasterer by trade and started a company called D. Jansen & Co. in 1966. The mystery of how Dirk Jansen came up with the idea of using asbestos as loose insulation is still a mystery to this day, and one of the Jansen family members have also chosen not to disclose. In 1991, he was interviewed by a 60 Minutes reporter and asked whether he had regretted what he had done, but simply asked, why? Clearly not feeling any guilt for his deadly creation. Now, Jansen never lived to see the tragedy that unfolded from his idea of pumping loose asbestos fibres into the ceilings of Canberra homes, and he ended up dying in 2001 in a nursing home and was never convicted for his negligence. The ACT government also introduced a series of actions to address the dangers associated with Mr. Fluffy insulation. It first began with an eradication program initiated to remove and replace Mr. Fluffy insulation from the affected homes. In 2014, the ACT government announced it would spend $1 billion to buy back and then demolish the affected houses. Health services were also established to assist certain individuals exposed to Mr. Fluffy insulation.
The ACT government also recommended that asbestos assessments be mandatory for anyone who intends on buying properties built in the 1980s. Unfortunately, for a builder named Dean Pappas, who bought a home in Reed in December of 2021, didn't find out that this home he had renovated for the past 7 weeks was filled with Mr. Fluffy asbestos until he decided to organise for a ceiling fan to be installed. The sinister discovery was made by the electrician who found the loose fill fibres after cutting a hole in the bathroom ceiling. Instead of celebrating Christmas with his family, Dean Pappas had no choice but to organise for his Reed home to be demolished. This prompted a court of the ACT government to audit older homes built before 1980 to check for Mr. Fluffy asbestos. For the victims of Mr. Fluffy asbestos, every day has been a battle. While many have lost their health, some even lost their lives. Their experiences have not been in vain, though. A man named James Warner was diagnosed with mesothelioma in 2020, which was caused by his exposure to asbestos, which occurred during his young childhood while he was growing up in a family home. He successfully campaigned for a financial aid to help support the victims of asbestos-related illnesses, but died in Canberra days after the compensation scheme was approved. The only positive thing that has come out of this whole tragedy is that Mr. Warner leaves behind an important and life-changing legacy.